Good afternoon and welcome everybody. We are live for the WIA Bracket Reveal Show presented by WI Wrestle. I am Nate Archinigo and I'm joined with
Crosby Slusher.
And we are going to break down and give you guys the seeds for all three divisions here at Team State. Also, first year, Team State is in La Crosse, Wisconsin this year. It has moved a little further north out of Madison. Really excited to see how that takes place. But first, we got to get into the seeds and the brackets. So we're going to start off here with Division 1. And right away, here's our seeds and brackets. Our 1 seed, our 5-time defending state champions, Kaukauna, followed by 2 seed Holman, 3 seed Slinger, 4 seed Waunakee, 5 seed Brown Deer, 6 seed the wild card team, Bayport, 7 seed Muskego, and 8 seed Milton. Right away, Crosby, we see Kaukauna and Holman, our top 2 ranked teams in the state, as the top 2 seeds, opposite sides of the bracket. Super exciting right there. But the first matchup, Kaukauna versus Milton, what do we have?
Yeah, the Kaukauna-Milton matchup is an interesting one because we have Kaukauna, who went to state with 8 qualifiers, 7 of those qualifiers placing. Well, Milton had 5 qualifiers, only 2 placers, but both of those placers took home a state title, that being Brody Lewis at 106 and Gage Gross at 165. At 165, we did have a matchup between DeGroot and Gross in the state semifinals, where Gross took that matchup home 11-8. We also did have another overlapping between 120 qualifiers at Kaukauna 120 being DiPiazza and Milton qualifier being Cullen Loveland.
Yeah, very exciting to see that. Also, if you're just a wrestling fan, you're going to see 3 different state champions in this duel alone. You love to see the top talent making its way the next weekend to Team State. Moving on, in the Waunakee versus Brown Deer duel, that matchup is between our 4 and 5 seeds. Winner there will get the winner of Kaukauna versus Milton. In the Brown Deer duel, Crosby, these are 2 new faces at Team State. What are we looking for in this duel? What do we have?
Yeah, so with Waunakee, they had 4 state qualifiers this year, 2 of them placing. McCoy Smith took home a state title this year, while Brown Deer qualified more with 7 qualifiers, 2 placers. Max Hay taking home a state title at 126, and the returning state champ, Mekhi Rogers, took home a 5th place finish this year. We actually did not have any matchups this year between those 2 at state, so it'll be interesting to see going forward. There were qualifiers 157 being Mekhi Rogers and Gabriel Metzler, who took 4th.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting to see how things shake out when you don't have a lot of overlap. Also, keep an eye on Brown Deer's heavyweight, Mekhi Rogers. He obviously placed 5th at the state tournament, but he might have been battling injury. I'm not quite sure, so hopefully we see him wrestle in that matchup. Also, Brown Deer did use 2 of their female wrestlers at team sectionals to qualify for Team State. Not sure if they're going to be wrestling in the duel or not, but it could make a difference next weekend. Our next duel is between Slinger and Bayport. Slinger, our 3 seed, Bayport, our 6 seed. Last year, Bayport was at Team State. They made the semifinals. Slinger, a new face. What do we have here in matchups, Crosby?
Yeah, Bayport being the wild card here. This is going to be an interesting one given Slinger's 4 qualifiers. They have Emmett Becker, who took 3rd at 144, Sam Gehring, who made the state finals at 150, and then Bayport had 3 qualifiers this year, 2 of them making the finals at 132 with Schlumpf and 175 with Tucker Athey. He took 2nd this year. We have no matchups between these 2 once again. It'll be an interesting one. I know Slinger, the 106 and 165, also made the blood round, so those 4 qualifiers are going to be coming out hot.
Yeah, this is a really exciting duel. You never know what you're going to get when you don't have those overlapping matchups. Also, I believe Bayport was in that really tough team sectional that we've seen and talked about previously in the past. So you know they're a quality lineup. They may only have 3 state qualifiers on their team, but they have a top-to-bottom lineup that I think does really well in duels. Excited to see how they compete with Slinger because that's kind of been the word on the street with them as well. They have a very strong dual lineup, and you kind of see it here with only 4 qualifiers, but they still were able to punch their ticket to Team State. And our final matchup in Division One is a rematch from last year's first round as well. We have 2-seed Holman taking on 7-seed Muskego. Last season, these two teams wrestled in the first round at Team State, where Holman got the W 57-18. Little familiarity here. These guys are rematching once again. What do we have?
Yeah, this one, Holman had a great state tournament. They had 7 qualifiers, 5 placers. 3 of those placers made the state finals with Brendan Henderson at 113, Rex Lancaster at 120, and Brock Needham at 126. They also had a 3rd place finish out of Nathan Henderson and a 5th place finish out of AJ Alish. Then Muskego had 4 qualifiers. They did not take home a placement this year. However, they're still a tough team. There was a matchup between these two at 120 with Lancaster. He tech-falled Herzig in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, so between matchups and a duel, like I've said a couple times now, a lot of familiarity. Watch out for Holman. Their state semis at individual state was a heck of a round. They just seem to go on a run, and those are always teams that are dangerous when they have back-to-back-to-back weights with state qualifiers and heavy hitters, as you might like to call them. That's where you can start to build momentum. Let's see how that plays out in the duel here in a week. But moving on, we have the Division II teams. Little new thing this year. We have 8 teams at the Team State tournament in Division 2 and 3. Here are your top 8 seeds. Number 1, Evansville. Number 2, GET Melrose. Number 3, Coleman, who was your runner-up last year. Number 4, St. Croix Falls. Number 5, Osceola. That was your wild card team. Number 6, Port Washington. Number 7, Denmark. And number 8, East Troy. First round matchup, Evansville versus East Troy, the 1 and the 8 seeds. What are we looking for here, Crosby? I know that East Troy, this is their first time at Team State since 2006, so they're making their way back. That's really exciting for them, and they obviously have good things going down there, and they're part of the state. But what are we looking for in the duel, Crosby?
Yeah, it's super cool for East Troy to be back at Team State. They are coming in against the tough Evansville lineup. Evansville had 5 qualifiers. All 5 qualifiers making the podium this year. And East Troy, obviously, a still tough lineup. 4 qualifiers, 3 placers, 2 finalists, and still a tough Max Gonzalez at 150, taking 5th. And then the only matchup at state between these two teams was 138, Bogard versus Crandall. Bogard was up 8-3 in the quarterfinals and then got the fall on Liam Crandall. So a lot of cool matchups still. Looking forward to it.
East Troy, not a stranger to having their backs against the wall and finding a way to get it done. I know at their sectionals, they took out Wilmot, who had, I believe, 8 state qualifiers, so that's double what East Troy had. Evansville obviously has 5. They took out a very tough Mount Horeb en route to making it to Team State. So that is your first round match between your 1 and 8 seeds. Your second matchup is between St. Croix Falls, last year's Team State champions, in a crazy match that ended with a fall to win by Drake Peterson, who is still on the team. But we have our matchup between St. Croix Falls and Osceola. Those are your 4 and 5 seeds. Osceola, as I mentioned, the wild card team as well, earning the 5 seed here. What is the matchups? What's the breakdown there?
Yeah, so St. Croix Falls had 5 qualifiers, taking home 3 medals, all within the top 4, which is very impressive, where Osceola had 7 qualifiers, being that wild card team, taking home 6 medals. They had no matchups at state, but they have 1 qualifier matchup at 175 between Isaac Dunham and Drake Peterson, who took 3rd for St. Croix Falls.
Also, moving on to Coleman versus Port Washington. That is a matchup between our 3 and 6 seed. Coleman was your state runner-up team last season. This year, though, they're taking on a tough Port Washington team in the first round that's been in the state rankings throughout the year. Port Washington had to defeat Kewaskum to make it here. Coleman, one of your top teams all season long. This is a really exciting first-round match.
Yeah, so Coleman had 9 qualifiers this year, only taking home 3 medals at 106, 113 in heavyweight, where Port Washington had 6 qualifiers, taking home medals at 113 and a title at 215 for Garrett Kaczynski. We do have matchups at 113, 144, and 215 out of qualifiers. Well, actually at 113, we have a placer matchup between Grayson
Kepke.
Kepke and Bentley Nowak. A third placer, Nowak from Coleman versus sixth place Kepke at 113. That's a matchup to keep an eye on.
Yes, it always is. I'm always interested to see how coaches, when team state comes around, it's after individual state. You see the lineup start to shuffle. Will this match take place? Will one of the coaches want to move people around? I'm not sure, but I am very excited for it. Also, worth noting in this one as well, Port Washington had Cora Stewart wrestle for them at team sectionals. She wrestled in both of their duels. She placed fourth on the girls' side of things at individual state this year at 120 pounds, at 100 and, and she wrestled at 120 pounds in the team sectionals. They needed her to qualify. They won their duel over Kewaskum in the semis, 33-32, before they had defeated Pewaukee in the finals. Cora Stewart was a big part of this team to make it to team state. Will we see her again in the lineup or not? Something to keep an eye on. Moving forward, though, into our next dual meet, we have GET versus Denmark. GET is your 2 seed. Denmark is your 7 seed. What do we have to look forward to here, Crosby?
Yeah, so GET had 8 qualifiers this year, half of them taking home medals, where Denmark had 5 qualifiers with 2 of them taking home medals. We did have a matchup at state in the opening round between Koss and Welsing. Koss did get the win there, pinning Welsing in 29 seconds of the first round. Very crucial for team points, obviously, heading into this duel. We also have matchups at 165 and 175 out of qualifiers. Nolan Larson, who took third, versus Merrick Windsor, who did not place this year.
Yeah, that is a very interesting little spot to take a look at. As we were just mentioning before, will teams shuffle their lineups or not? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that Denmark, as you said, at 165 and 175, Larson and Kielpowski for Denmark, 2 of their hammers, their 2 state placers, placing 3rd and 5th. GET obviously has 2 very solid wrestlers there, being state qualifiers, but how will those matchups take place? Will we see a little gamesmanship from the coaches? Something to keep an eye on. And then finally, we're going to head down to Division 3 and take a look at our top 8 seeds here for Team State. The 1 seed, Waiawega Fremont, 2 seed, Cedar Grove, Belgium, 3 seed, Shiocton, 4 seed, Marathon, 5 seed, Aquinas, 6 seed, Auburndale, 7 seed, Mineral Point, 8 seed, Glenwood City. And right away, I have to say, there is a lot of familiarity with the teams here. A lot of teams have wrestled each other this season already. Waiawega Fremont, Glenwood City, that is your 1-8 matchup here in the first round. Last year, Waiawega Fremont made the team state finals. And this season, teams in the field, they have defeated Marathon 35-23. They also defeated Shiocton 52-27. Waiawega, what do they have on the individual side of things?
Yeah, Waiawega Fremont had 9 qualifiers this year, 2 third-place medals, and a first-place finish out of Collingham at 157, where Glenwood City had 6 qualifiers and 1 champ at 113 out of Wayland Fry. We do have a matchup at 113 between Fry and Lenoble. That was actually a semifinals matchup this year. Fry did beat Lenoble 3-1 in overtime, 4-1 in overtime. And we also have another matchup at 120. Azora Techfold Bright in the opening round. And then we have 4 more matchups out of qualifiers that did not wrestle at state at 106, 126, 132, and 144.
Wow, that is a lot. There's going to be a lot of overlap in this one, a lot of uncertainty on how things might play out, especially at the end of the year when you shift your lineups, when guys are trying to peak for the best time of the year and have their best performances. You never know what you're going to get. But again, I love seeing multiple different state champs at in one single duel. It makes things exciting, getting your best at state. You love to see that. Waiawega was also second. They had the second most state qualifiers of any team this year. So they're a very well-rounded squad with 9 state qualifiers, as you said. Our next matchup is between Marathon and Aquinas. I personally got to watch this duel earlier this season. This will be a fun one between your 4 and 5 seeds. Marathon lost to Aquinas in the duel this year. Aquinas beat them 56-24. Aquinas has also beaten Waiwiga Fremont, your top seed this season, 45-30, and they also have defeated Mineral Point 35-26 this year. So they have a very strong dual team, wrestling and beating a handful of the teams in this field already. See if they can put it together again. But on the individual side of things, Crosby, what do we have from Marathon and Aquinas?
So Marathon had 6 qualifiers this year, 3 of them taking home medals. They had 2 finalists with both the Underwood brothers, Taylor and Blake. Taylor taking second, Blake taking home the championship at 120, whereas Aquinas had 6 qualifiers, 5 placers, and this is super impressive. They had a first place finish out of Martez Sheard at 126, third place at 138 out of Paulson, a second place out of Flaggy at 144, a third place out of Hargrove at 157, and then another championship out of Tyson Martin at heavyweight. Some matchups to look forward to. Paulson beat Quintance 4-1 in OT in the quarterfinals at 138 pounds. We also have matchups at 157 and 165 that we didn't get to see at state. One thing, though, about 157 from Marathon, Swain Stencil, one of the top-ranked guys in the state all year long, did not wrestle in the state tournament, even though he did qualify.
Yeah, so I don't know the inside scoop on that. Will we see him or not at Team State is certainly going to make a difference for Marathon. As you said, one of the top wrestlers going into the state tournament this year, but as you said, he did not wrestle. Very excited to that. Also, I believe, Crosby, Aquinas won the individual title, team scoring for the boys at individual state this year. Did they not?
I think they took second.
Was it second?
Mount Horeb took first.
Mount Horeb took first. Aquinas was second in the team scoring, but it shows that they have a really solid team. And as you mentioned, 5 of those guys being on the podium this season. Very excited for this one. Very excited to see how things shake out with a couple of these matchups potentially happening. You have, obviously, like you said, Blake Underwood, 2-time state champ. He's at 120, and then you have a state champ at 126 pounds. Would either coach think about having them wrestle each other? Does Marathon have to shake things up after already previously having matchups this season? I'm not sure. Glad I'm not the coaches. But as a fan, I'm excited to see how it all unfolds. Moving on, though, to Shiocton versus Auburndale. That is our next matchup. Shiocton is your 3 seed. Auburndale, your 6 seed. Auburndale defeated, so again, as I'm saying, there's a lot of familiarity. Auburndale defeated Marathon this year, 43-27. That's the overlap with the teams. On the individual side of things, what do we have?
Yeah, so we have Auburndale with 5 qualifiers. They took home 2 medals at 126 with Carson Wheeler and 132 with Zaid Grassel. Now, Shiocton had 8 qualifiers this year, taking home 5 medals. They had 2 finalists at 106 and 138. This is going to be an interesting one. They did have a matchup at 126 between Wheeler and Volkman, where Wheeler did pin Volkman for 5th place. Well, at 285, we also have Collar, who pinned Becker in the blood round at state. And then we have some matchups that we did not see at state at 113, 132, and 150 out of some qualifiers.
A lot of state qualifiers in this one. Going to be a very exciting duel. But we have one more duel to get to still. That is your 2 seed, Cedar Grove, Belgium, taking on Mineral Point, who is your 7 seed. Last year, Mineral Point won the team state title. This year, they're at the 7 seed. Certainly could get it done again, but we'll have to see how it all unfolds. Right away, though, Cedar Grove, Belgium, worth noting, they had 10 state qualifiers, which is the most of any team at state this year in any division. Mineral Point not too far behind with the 7, but on the individual side of things, a little deeper. What do we have, Crosby?
Yeah, so Cedar Grove, Belgium had obviously 10 qualifiers, like Nate said, and then they came home with 6 medals, 1 finalist, and I believe they took 5th place overall in the individual team race. So when we go to Mineral Point, they had 7 qualifiers, 5 placers, and 1 finalist. Now, out of these 17 qualifiers in this duel, we did not see a single matchup between them at state. But we will get to see matchups at 113, 126, 138, and 144 in this duel out of some qualifiers and placers.
Yes, this is going to be a really exciting duel with no head-to-head matchups at state. Cedar Grove, Belgium, trying to dethrone last year's state champions. They're a new team at Team State this year. Obviously, Mineral Point, as I said, has won it. Cedar Grove, Belgium also did not have a ton of matches or duels with teams in this field yet this year. So I know I said there's a lot of familiarity with the Division III teams, but Cedar Grove, Belgium, not one of them. So where do they shake up with the state's best? Something everyone should be excited to see. But that's the 3 divisions. That's their seeds. That's your first round matchups. Let me give you the times on when everyone's wrestling. At 5:30 p.m., we're going to see Kaukauna and Milton versus Waunakee and Brown Deer in Division 1. We will also see Evansville versus East Troy, St. Croix Falls versus Osceola, and then in Division 3, we will see Wyawega Fremont and Glenwood City, and Marathon versus Aquinas. Those are your 5:30 duels at Team State. And at 7:30 p.m., we will follow up with the other 2 duels in each division. In Division 1, we'll see Slinger and Bayport, Holman and Muskego. In Division 2, we will see Coleman versus Port Washington, GET versus Denmark. And in Division 3, Shiocton versus Auburndale, Cedar Grove, Belgium versus Mineral Point. That is your Team State bracket reveal. That is your top 8 seeds in every division. That is your matchups in every division. I am super excited to head to La Crosse next weekend for the first time to watch Team State. This was your bracket reveal show presented by WI Wrestle. I'm Nate Archinigo.
I'm Crosby Slusher.
And we will see you guys